I'm Dylan Gott. This is John Hastings. We're talking about Dave Meltzer this week.
Oh my
John,
God, yeah, we are. I'm so excited. Dave Meltzer, I want you to know this right now. Dave Meltzer still uses Twitter like it's 2011.
I like that.
Look no further than the tweet that he wrote 8 hours ago. They had high hopes for him and made him IC champion, but his injuries didn't allow him to perform at the level hoped for, and he didn't get over at that level. That is responding to Mark Denver, who doesn't even have a picture in his Twitter account, and then a list of numbers and letters as his Twitter name. And it's when KVE was brought into WWE. Was the plan to make him one of the top stars, or did they know he would flake out and his time had passed? Can you remember his early months? And he was over and looked like a star. Dave Meltzer, ladies and gentlemen, still interacting with fans like Trump never got elected president.
What I like about Dave Meltzer is that he's interacting with fans, and I'm certain that his own kids see him for one meal, and it's fast.
Oh, and it's messy. Let's first of all, as
Oh
in
yeah,
Pro
yeah.
Wrestler Review form, Dylan, Phil, I have to go violently blow my nose, or I'm about to throw up boogers all over my computer.
Okay, cool. Dave Meltzer was born October 24th, 1959. This man is somehow reached the age of 62 years old. So fuck, his birthday was just recently. Did he have any birthday wishes? Who knows? But basically, Meltzer, for the first part of his life, loved baseball. He loved baseball. He always wanted to be a baseball man, which certainly is interesting because there's a point in his life where he could have chose between baseball and wrestling, and he chooses wrestling, which is essentially like, hey, am I going to be the only person who covers this thing, or do I throw my hat in the ring to be actually famous? And he definitely chose being a weird guy. I was just talking about.
I
was telling
already
the
figured
listeners
it out
about-
from context, but continue. I think I figured it out from context. I want you to explain it to me, but I think I figured it out from context. Go ahead.
What do you think it was?
Dave Meltzer had the opportunity to become a legitimate sports journalist and has
Yes.
probably the knowledge, especially within MMA, to do so. But Dave Meltzer went, much like the Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels at the end of Dumb and Dumber, he redirected the fame bus to someone else, and he kept walking down that highway alone. Because let me tell you
I
this
will say
about Dave
this.
Meltzer.
Go for it.
He's the littlest hobo of sports journalism.
Ooh, maybe
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Tomorrow,
Settle down.
Settle down.
But what I want to say
Today.
about Meltzer is today we're gonna respond to some eggs on Twitter.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. But the way that Dave Meltzer sort of manifests his weird fame is any person's point is appropriate. Any point and opinion deserves acknowledgement. And all things around wrestling should be treated with amazing care as long as everyone acknowledges I am the utmost expert at it. And anyone who disagrees with me is very much wrong.
Well, it's very interesting to me that this guy chose to be a professional wrestling journalist because A, that's not a thing. Like he went to journalism school, he's a real journalist, and B, he loves facts and he chose to do the only thing where there are no facts.
But but I disagree. He loves facts and he chose to be a journalist in a place where he controls all the facts. Wrestling is very interesting in that wrestling is basically a world populated by men trying to create their own universes. Vince McMahon didn't like the world, so he made his own. Jim Crockett couldn't get out from underneath his daddy, Jim's shadow. So he's like, look how great my world is now, Daddy. Daddy, I took your world and now it's my. Jim Cornette's father was a political mover in Louisville and ran the newspaper. And Jim Cornette went on to be a famous TV star. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's.
Yeah, Jim Cornette is very much like how people on Twitter complain about like John Mulaney. I saw people, I mean, this is the weird thing we're involved in where we see comedians tweeting about comedians, but just people complaining about John Mulaney and Nick Kroll having rich parents, and it's like the exact same thing with Jim Cornette, where it's like, yeah, this guy's very talented, but for sure he got ahead because it's like he could fail. He probably went full-time at wrestling immediately because he's like, I like it, and if I was
This is an utter sidebar, by the way, is I saw someone complaining who is British, who I was like, wow, you, my friend, are living in a glass house. I'm not going to say who it was, but it was so like it was
100%.
very much of the.
Well, we did comedy with a guy whose parents lives in the Tower of London, and he was and he'll complain about stuff. I'm like, you live in a castle. You live in a
acknowledges
literal
it. He
castle.
acknowledges it at least. I know another guy. I know more than one person that if you saw where their parents lived, you'd be like, Wait a minute. Why do you have flatmates? Like, you have roommates because
Yeah.
it's fun. You're one of those people.
Hey man, at least they're not. Some people flex, some people don't. Who cares? Anyway, fucking.
And let me tell you
Dave,
who flexes the most. Dave Meltzer.
Oh yeah. Bam, bam.
He's got a journalism degree from San Jose University. He walked out and he went,
Ooh.
I'm going to start a newspaper to let everyone know about all my tape trading activities and also
This is the thing about
to
him.
discuss a family's murder. Let's never forget
Here's the
that's the
thing.
same newspaper. The same newspaper is the number one source on a murder-suicide.
Mhm.
And for many years, let his friends know what tapes he had available, not for purchase,
Which newspaper?
for trading. The Wrestler Observer newspaper.
The Wrestling Observer newspaper was just report on random murders. So Dave Meltzer also came up with true crime, the genre. Did you know that?
I did know that, yes. Because bear in mind, Dave Meltzer says that the biggest moment of subscription for the Wrestling Observer was, Dylan?
Benoit?
Benoit number 1, Screwjob number 2.
Yeah, real life drama, obviously, because this is funny because Dave Meltzer's like seemingly ultra nemesis Eric Bischoff was right about that, and I still think he's right about that. Where he's like, wrestling fans want it to be like a magic show where they know it was fake, but they can't imagine how you did it, and that's all they want.
He's 100% correct. That's exactly what they want, which is the point that it took so much. It took wrestling itself being like, this is fake, and for fans to finally be like, well, I guess it's not real, but I'll still pretend.
We're kind of circling back here. One point I wanted to make about Meltzer not choosing sports journalism instead of... So Dave Meltzer, if you look at him now, like, sports journalism very much became and has become being on television to the point where it's like every sports journalist is like pretty hot now.
Yeah,
And
no, it's being a sports journalist. Like Tony Kornhauser would never be a sports journalist today.
Tony Kornheiser and Michael Wilbon. Michael Wilbon maybe just because he's super charismatic, but Tony Kornheiser like only was grandfathered in. And for Meltzer,
Michael
think he
Wilbon,
did
by the
make-
way, is the other guy from PTI, correct? He's
Yes.
the other guy?
Yeah.
That guy's definitely on television because that guy is charismatic in a way. That guy is charismatic in a way that all women are lovely. It's just universal.
But this is the thing where Meltzer, because of his like lack of charisma and his need to like be a super nerd and be right all the time, there's no way Dave Meltzer could ever. I mean, he would be amazing on one, but like being amazing.
But a
you know
full
what? Actually,
episode-
I'm turning around on this because like
No, he would be amazing on him. Dave Meltzer should be on.
just be getting so pissed off at Shannon Sharp and
Oh
Skip
my
Bayless
God.
for not knowing anything.
Just
be
getting
so
getting into Shaq's face. I don't care that you played for Orlando. You are incorrect on where the best place to get a Cubano sandwich in Florida is, Mr. O'Neill.
But like that's Dave Meltzer. That's who he is, and I don't know.
Dave
but in
Meltzer-
the '90s, he wouldn't have risen because he was like, although he's shredded as Dick says, he's mad shredded. He would have just been like, if he would have had his own AM radio show, it would have just been him listing stats, and people would have been like, "Can I call in?"
my
And he would
God.
be like, "Oh, we're taking a caller. Hey, I'd like to." No.
Yeah.
And then there'd be 5 minutes of silence to drive home. No one gets to talk but him, and then more.
Yeah,
stats.
we're not here for emotional opinions. You either state your opinion or you do not state it. You do not say what you would like. This is an adult sports radio show. My name is Dave Meltzer.
Yeah.
I would like you to know that
And he
someone,
recorded standing.
of course, standing, shirtless, pantsless. So if any sort of bathroom break had to take place, it would just be done into a bucket affixed to his groin or asshole.
Do you think
The
that
show
Dave
would
Meltzer has
continue
ever?
unfettered. Go ahead.
Do you ever think Dave Meltzer has ever had a dessert?
Yes. At his son's
You
first
do.
birthday,
He
at his son's
did not.
first birthday, he sampled the birthday cake and did not enjoy it.
I think Dave Meltzer
Too many things
eats
going
like
on in my
Dr.
mouth.
Oz. Yeah. He eats like Dr. Oz, where he's like has one handful of berries every hour on the hour and sleeps standing up like a horse.
Fun fact about Dr. Oz, possibly the world's greatest heart surgeon at one point, and then just took all of that energy and knowledge into television and is now a billionaire.
Yeah, exactly. He also got so good at heart surgery, he'd be like, I'm going to bring a shaman in just to like have them do spells on the person while
Oh
I
my
do this
God,
heart
that-
surgery. And it'd be like,
that-
that helped. And they'd be like, I guess it did.
That Behind the Bastards, which, by the way, if you guys are not listening to Behind the Bastards, it is
Endorsing
the sound.
podcasts all over the place here.
It is the soundtrack to our nightmares, by the way. The Wally George episode, that is what I want the Wrestler Review television show to be, which is just me and
I haven't
Dylan.
listened to that one.
Oh my God, you got to listen to it. It is, let me put it this way. If we decided to go another way with our politics, we could co-host that show. It was a man angrily.
Wait, Lefty? Or
It's called
Wally George?
Wally George.
Oh, we think we could co-host Wally George. Okay.
Yeah, we could co-host. Like, it's just the two of us yelling at the members of the band Guar over socialism.
That'd be good.
Yeah. Oh my God, why is everyone smoking? Because we got to cover up the smell of gasoline that's in the studio. No, shut the fuck up. Dave Meltzer's graduated in the late 70s, and in 1980, he decided to.
I think we're skipping something ahead here.
Go ahead.
Something from his childhood I do want to touch on is the fact that he was into tape trading.
Oh boy, was he?
Before VHS. He was trading audio tapes.
What?
Yeah, he was just listening to
do the math on that.
He was walking around, I assume, or maybe sitting. You know what? Would have been before Walkmans too. So a young Dave Meltzer, imagine this at home, sitting.
He was sat in front of
perfectly fucking still
in front of the family stereo. Just having
had to have been. No, I mean it could have been headphones. Imagine
his
that
luxurious mullet being blown back. I mean, this is first of all, I hadn't even put this together, and second of all, this is up there with the lead singer of Nashville Pussy filming a sketch with you and Garrett, and then just listening to old World Series radio broadcasts on his iPod.
Well, that was, the lead singer of Nashville Pussy was DJing a club. He put his iPod on shuffle because he thought he had time to have a smoke, and then it was just like, we're here at the third inning of the 1992 NLC champ. It wasn't even the World Series; it was the NLC championship. And he would. Here's how weird that is. He's like a great guy, but like he also listens to games where they lost, and it's baseball. You're listening to like 3 hours of the guy being like, because most of baseball is just a guy going, I went to the store to get some blueberries today. They were too overpriced, so I compared the prices of the blueberries in St. Louis with the ones here in Atlanta. Let me say, I might be moving to St. Louis. Oh, that's ball too. Very interesting story. Here's how you really get the most out of your blueberries.
So
in a
much
garden.
of my childhood is with my father just putting on a baseball game as loud as its music and just driving somewhere unnecessarily. This is my dad's move. Oh, good, the baseball game's on. Oh, are you going to put it on louder than it is necessary to hear men talking? Yes, I am. Very good. What a beautiful day here at Scotiabank Place. I'd like everyone to know that my wife is cheating on me, and I like to smell the wet spot. All right.
What's going to be popularized is known as a cuckold, but right now we got ball too. I'll tell you this, with those sturdy hips and that lovely backside, I think Movon could really drive it into my wife. We got strike one to count as 2-1, of course, to Movon, who will not respond to my calls. Movon, I can see you looking at your phone, Mo, and then just ignoring the call. That's ball 3. 3-1 count to Movon. You don't want to get you don't want to have that count against Movon. What else you don't want to have? You don't want to have me as your enemy, Mo, because I swear to God, I will end your career.
That's many people would not think that is a foul ball. That is in fact a foul ball. Also, many people would not think a good Sunday is farting in the bathtub and then biting the bubble. Both things are true.
You gotta chase my friend, down the bubble. That's how you really.
Let me tell you what that is right there. That's ball 1 right there.
But Meltzer would listen to these audio. So this is the funny thing because it is new school.
Bear in mind, he's then listening to Gordon solely.
Yeah. Just indoor
without
cigarettes.
Seeing anything. Yeah, just welcome everyone to Championship Wrestling from Florida. I've had 4 Merit Ultralights and 3 drinks. Let's go to Kevin Sullivan.
I would like to roundedly say we're all over the place here, but I would like to roundedly say why I think Dave Meltzer is probably
go ahead.
Probably a good example for his children, but maybe doesn't spend the most time with them. I will say is because not only does he say it takes 100 hours a week to produce a Wrestling Observer newsletter, which is 14 and a half hours a day.
That's insane.
He also is jacked. So that means that he's probably putting in at least an hour at the gym we could say every 4 days this man is putting in minimum an hour at least at the gym. So it's like, when does he sleep? Does he sleep like 3 hours a day?
I don't think Dave Meltzer spends that much time putting together the Wrestling Observer newsletter.
I think that
I think that Dave Meltzer thinks that all parts of his life are driven towards putting together that newsletter. In that, like when he's speaking briefly to his son before he gets awkward and goes into another part of the house, he's like, "That's me putting the news. I'm checking to see if my son has sources." Have you heard from Tony Khan, Noah?
Yeah, he doesn't ask what's happening at school. He goes, "What's going on Twitter?" And his son's like, I'm not on Twitter. I'm 9." And he said, "Useless then."
Yeah, well, I guess
Useless.
Then you talk to me when you're like your older brother who's on Twitter. Jack Dorsey is not my older brother, Dad. Yes, he is.
So there was actually, I didn't know this. Well, I knew that Mike Tenay did newsletters before, but Mike Tenay did newsletters in the 70s, and Norm Dooley did them in the 80s, and just how funny it is. That does explain the 70s newsletter, kind of explains the lack of respect every single WCW announcer had for Mike Tenay.
It really does.
Like,
it's
a body slam, and Dusty Rhodes would be like, "No, it's not," as he would have taken out the hay, dropped a bunch of shit on his feet. That's what I call it. You dropped the shit, baby.
It's me, Bobby the Brain Heenan. I currently have mouth cancer, and I've given it a name for another cancer. Mike Tenay. How are you, Mike?
It's so funny that, like, up until AEW, knowing the names of moves was fucking for losers.
And even though it's still modern wrestling, they still have Jim Ross there to interrupt in the middle of Excalibur.
To interrupt and be like, "Why are you talking about previous things? You should only talk about football. Wrestling is for shame."
Yeah, that was a plancha, JR. I prefer a burrito, actually, Excalibur, and I'll ask you not to speak to me directly. Anyway, now for a long-winded story about my wife named Jan, who's passed away. No, Jim, no, not on the mic. No, Jim.
Hey, let's lay off JR. He does have cancer right now.
Does he really?
Best of luck, Jim. Skin cancer.
What are you talking? Oh, my God. I'm going to say this. Jim Ross did something in life. Jim Ross...
Yeah, he smokes cigarettes like constantly, and he gets wasted all the time. He's a badass boy.
Yeah,
also like 70. He's getting fucked up all the time.
He is getting fucked up. Yeah, Jim Ross does occasionally. When you watch AEW Dynamite, and it looks like someone woke that old man from a beach bar and just brought him to Daly's place.
Yeah, of course, because that's what happened. Because he's the third guy. He just occasionally comes in. And he's like,
"Boomer sooner."
Oh fuck! You know what I mean? Shit! That's fucking nuts. Still, the best announcer of all time is Don West, where he'd be like, "Fuck, Christopher Daniels fucking jumped off that shit."
Oh my God!
No
one talks about how good Mike Tenay and Don West were.
Yeah,
because it was just
Tenay just doing the rest, and Don West being like, "Let me cut you off here, Mike. Fuck."
Yeah,
look at the fucking tits on Tracy Brooks, and then you fucking got a guy jump in. This is the fucking best thing I ever seen.
Literally just there's an Abyss match where Mike Tenay calls the entire thing, and then it's going right into the Black Hole Slam, and then he goes, "Go ahead, Don," and then Don just goes, "Black Hole Slam."
Yeah, that's why Don West was the best, where it's like a guy calmly talking. It's literally how me and my brother-in-law watch wrestling, where I try and be like, "Oh, this guy does this," and he's like, "He just fucking called that guy a bitch. Maybe that guy is a bitch." Like, this is what wrestling needs more Greek men yelling at them.
What it basically, Mike Tenay and Don West doing commentary was basically like a very quiet woman in a baby boomer marriage finally laid down the law with her husband and just went, "Actually, I'm talking, Don."
Yeah.
And so then she talks for a little bit, but all the while her overbearing, intensely World War II vet husband needs to like chime in. And so that's Don West at the end of every TNA match where it's like, "Oh, and that's a 450 splash directly into a DDT. Go ahead, Don." Just shit.
I'm pretty sure a little bit of brown came out there.
I think everybody knows it, but I'm just going to say it. I am tired and I want a fucking sandwich brought to the booth. Bring me a sandwich to the booth.
No, it would never be that. It'd be like, "I need some coffee to slow down." Ah!
There's a certain type of man who lives in Florida that Dylan Gott has the vibe of down perfectly. Just I'm being paid too much for what I'm capable of.
Don West was the best. Anyway, obviously goes to San Jose University. And he really, really starts in earnest in the 80s with The Observer. I can't believe he did more newsletters before this. Dave Meltzer, before he goes full time with the Observer, had been doing newsletters to seemingly no one for 14 whole years.
This is the thing that people like talk about, where it's like with starting podcasts, starting anything, which is you're like, man, you need to be, some people are successful overnight, and it's like, yeah, and other people, they invent an industry, and to do that, it takes them a teenager's lifetime. It takes it takes a boy who's masturbating amount of time for Dave Meltzer to be able to literally just have people in the industry the newsletter was about be aware of the newsletter. It was like the middle 80s.
This is the odd thing. He's 59, and like 86, he decides to give up other sports journalism and really focus. So that is, he's being like, hey, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to tell everyone what the honky tonk man is up to for money. And he was 27 years old, which completely, and he started, of course, when he was like 13 with these newsletters, almost completely mirroring what it's like to do stand-up comedy now.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I'm going to leave my job where I make $50,000 a year guaranteed to explain to people the psoriasis on my penis.
Yeah, I need to be able to get a lot of rebates back from the government, because my income has drastically shrunk to the point that people are noticeably concerned about me.
People say I wear rags, but for your information, I can't find those. I am nude, and I just paint my body.
Welcome everyone to the Wrestler Observer Radio. My name is Dave Meltzer. I am now going to let you all know what I would be making if I had stayed working for USA Today and kept all those stocks. I'd be making less than what I'm making right now. The print media is dead, Dave Meltzer. Because here's the other thing about Dave Meltzer. By going on his own and starting his own pirate ship in 1980, whatever he did, 1980s, and then growing it throughout, is he accidentally, much like Bill Simmons, became a sports media mogul by basically just being fired. Dave Meltzer, by doing nothing else, became this like absolute voice of righteousness within MMA, because the only thing that's adjacent to MMA when it first started was wrestling. So Dave Meltzer accidentally has become an expert on this sort of thing, in the same way that now Joe Rogan is just an expert on cultural life because people on the internet listen to him. It's the same thing with Dave Meltzer. Dave Meltzer is now considered the sports journalist based purely on the fact that in the 80s, he just went, I'll do this by myself. And that is what media empires are now, is just one guy's opinion.
The industry is that he has is Dave Meltzer. Like, it's kind of like he'd have to do the Wrestling Observer and whatever, but he could literally pivot to like, in an odd way, he's kind of like, oh, I'll just apply a gossip column format to sports.
Yeah, and it's what's interesting.
He's the Perez Hilton of wrestling.
I was going to say, yes, he's the Harvey Levin of wrestling, minus the cup filled with tea.
Oh yeah, there was that. I think it was like a Harvey Levin documentary. I got a bit through, but Crave Bell in Canada fucking sucks. Anyway,
fun fact about Harvey Levin. I was at an open mic with someone, and he said, I used to be Harvey Levin's assistant. I stole Kellyanne Conway's phone number from him. And I went, what are you talking about? And then he held it, but he's like, you want to call Kellyanne Conway? And I was like, I do, but also, why is this guy just talking to me like this at an open mic? And then I walked away.
Mm-hmm. And at no point did you just take his phone?
No. He was much bigger and stronger.
Want to call Kellyanne Conway? My phone now. I want to text her. What up, Kelly? I don't call people. Who calls someone? He's like, hey.
I do. I still call people all the time.
Really?
I call Kellyanne Conway. Hey, Kel. Hey, Kel, it's me, John. Just want to come in for a gossip.
So this is the weird thing about Meltzer, where everyone says, oh, all the wrestlers hate him. Oh, and he just reports gossip. He cites some of his big influences on how he thinks about wrestling is Bill Watts and Paul Bosch, because Bill Watts and Paul Bosch, and I guarantee it was like, he came to Paul Bosch and was like, hey, what is running a territory like? And same thing with Bill Watts, and a single tear went down both their eyes, and they went, no one's ever cared before.
You're 100% correct.
Yeah,
by the way.
And then they talked for 4 hours, where Dave Meltzer unblinkingly listened while sitting in a perfect posture.
Yeah, Dave Meltzer, by the way, considers the day Paul Bosch told him about territories and the day Bill Watts told him about what it is to be a booker, is he he considers that day better than the day his children were born. Like he literally
He remembers that day, and then he says that's his marriage, and his wife gets upset.
Yeah. He thinks he's married to Paul Bosch.
I'm married to Paul Bosch.
Yeah, exactly. Like he looks at his wife and he goes, "Your name's Paul," and she goes, "You're not naming one of our kids Gino."
Yeah, and this is the other thing is wrestlers would tell him how much they made, and then he was basically this huge book of knowledge for how much every wrestler in every territory is getting paid. And obviously promoters ended up hating that, and wrestlers would use him just basically to be like, well, this guy's getting paid this much, even though that guy released that information. Like wrestler A would be like, I get 4,000 a shot for this. Release that in the Observer. Dave Meltzer would print it. Everyone would read that, and then now that's the new price.
It's also that thing of he's gone through waves, which is now he is a respected journalist. But in the 80s, he was a pariah. Like obviously,
because he was actually reporting on like there's still kayfabe. Remember, because the NWA never. Don't forget this is they had after the WWF came out and was like, hey, athletic commissions we're no longer beholden to them because we're fake. The NWA had this massive thing where it was like, yeah, WWF is fake. This is still real fighting. Everyone was like, okay, cool, real fighting with the missing link.
Exactly. Yeah, it's the real fighting. It's the missing link versus Ric Flair in a "We're Hugging and Friends" match. Yeah, makes sense. This is real.
Yeah, exactly. Ric Flair does. Ric Flair has a way he falls down every single time, but it's fake.
All right, I just want to go through the waves I see of Dave Meltzer's sort of wrestler observer career, and then I want to go through the big stories that he's broken. Okay, the 80s. So basically 80s until the steroid era. He is this pariah giving actual news and fucking up the mojo of pro wrestling. WWF New Generation and the NWO era, he is an ally for them to like get information out, like how much is their contract worth, where are people going to manipulate the bosses, that sort of stuff. Then after that, he becomes a pariah again because he announces some stuff that kind of fucks some people over. And now he is like the old, aged, loving journalist of wrestling and sort of this weird half tastemaker, half like this fucking guy doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, I don't know that I think he's just like, people now criticize him because he has, like you said, created an industry. I'm really interested in how it got off because this is the fun thing about the Observer is that like you hear nothing but shoot, which we have on all our socials now, like Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, we post all these videos of just wrestlers shitting on him, but also like 1985, he credits two things with the fact that he could go full time or even approach going full time with the Observer, which was Jim Melby, who is another wrestling columnist at the time, gave him a ringing endorsement in one of his columns, and most of his subscribers being professional wrestlers.
Yeah.
Because like I said, that's how you knew what fucking Dirty Dick Slater was making as opposed to you. And that's how you knew what the house was in this territory. Is there's no internet. It's just the Wrestling Observer on this weird piece of paper with, I assume, blood marks on it because Dave like ate a pigeon outside because he needed the protein.
Yeah, he was hand publishing each magazine by literally killing birds, siphoning their gas.
Yeah, he was doing the old Sideshow Bob rule. He had foregone the printing press at this time. He said that was for losers.
Yeah. I will print this with my ass, and everyone thought Dave was joking, and he was like, "Oh no, that's actually how he's doing it."
Also, he credits a lot of early scoops with just being hammered, guys calling him up hammered because they were on the West Coast and he was on the East Coast, and being like, I got a report for you. I got the biggest goddamn dick in this country. And then he's like, oh,
it's
interesting.
It's the other way. Is he was on the West Coast, they were on the East Coast, so he's in San Jose. Then they'd call him drunk from fucking Boston. So it's fucking midnight there. It's 9 p.m. in the West. Dave is just settled down to sitting in a big thing of paper with a bunch of pens. And he gets called by, I assume, one of the British Bulldog. Hello, is this fucking Dave on his stomach? Jake's a fuck.
Yeah, we just strangled and killed a dog. Click.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just saying, Meltzer, I just want to let you know that you should report we had to buy a new Matilda because I just fucked it to death. I'm David Boy Smith.
Well, yes, and this is a lot of his scoops, and I think a lot of the reason he sticks with the Observer is because he's famous within the world of wrestling, and he for sure like there's a reason you do something, and if you're doing it just purely for money, which everyone in wrestling is like, we're just in this for the money. You're not, because otherwise you would have just been an engineer or something.
Well, they kind of don't know what money is in that weird way. If they're like, I'm in it for the money, you're like, are you? And they're like, yeah, I don't know what that is though. Like, it's like you'd go and do something else if you were in it for the money that would allow you to stay home and have a good quality of life. And he's like, yeah, I get
You would
paid.
never have to travel.
I get paid in an opportunity to not look at my wife. That's what I get paid in. And you're like,
The payment I am is that everyone has to see the outline of my hog every night. That's my payment.
I get paid in two things: people seeing the outline of my hog, and also being able to take a shit in a different hotel public bathroom every time I want to.
I don't use my own bathroom. I'm not into that gimmick. I go to the lobby every time. That's a little life hack.
Well, here's a little life hack from me to you. Go into the bathroom, use the toilet in the sink, wash your hands in the toilet.
Go to someone else's room, knock, and say, "Can I use your toilet?" And they say, you have a toilet in my room?" Maybe, yeah, but I want to use yours. Then you use yours, then you jack off in their sink, and then you go into your toilet, jack off in the toilet. That's two jack offs and one dump.
So let's go through the big phases of Dave Meltzer that explain his big
Let's do that after a break. We'll take a break and then come back.
All right. After the break, here are the following things we're going to talk about. How podcasts have revealed who hates Dave Meltzer. It's everyone in the office who clearly just is made to look like an asshole by his ability to find out information. 2, we're going to talk about the WrestleMania 3 attendance record. 4, we're skipping 3.
Skip 3.
We're talking about all the TV appearances he's made throughout the years. 5, Dylan and I full make out.
Yes.
After the break. Dylan, are you paused or frozen? I think you're frozen.
Frozen.
Nope, you're there. You're good. You were just very still.
Yeah, exactly. I've been practicing.
So, Dylan, we're back. It's the... Whoa. Did Dylan just time travel again? Dylan, where's Dylan? Dylan, come back to me.
I'm here.
Oh, you pranked me so good. So, it's WrestleMania 3. This, I think, is the first big... This is the first long-lasting dispute Dave Meltzer has with the WWE, which is... They go, it's 93,000 people at the Pontiac Silverdome, and Dave Meltzer then counts everyone in the crowd and goes, absolutely not, it's in the 70s.
Yeah.
And Bruce Pritchard is still angry that they got caught about this. Because it's...
Well, he could also call the venue. You could also call the Silverdome and be like, how much was it? And they'd be like, oh. Like, it's a matter of public record.
This is the thing. But what's weird is the WWE claim still will be like, no, we paid taxes on 93,000. And it's like, I mean, I don't think you did.
Yeah, they just say it. Like, I don't know. It's like a lot of the wrestlers aren't the actual weight they are. Did you know that, John?
I mean, that blew my... It took me years into doing this show when you pointed out, you're like, oh, yeah, like, The Undertaker's probably 6'5", and I was like, oh,
yeah.
Of course he is.
Well, it is like a weird thing that like we have both stood next to pro wrestlers, and it's like, man, if I face Christopher Daniels, my finisher could be the chokeslam.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing is you realize you're like, oh, I could absolutely have been a big man wrestler, and that is a real insult to other big men wrestlers.
Yeah, I mean, not in the WWF, we'd still be just like we'd be spark plugs in the WWF. But like in the WWE, we're fucking big man wrestlers.
Buddy, in AEW, I would be the Big Show.
You would. You'd be going eye to eye with the Butcher and being like, "Oh my God, look at him! Look how big he is! Oh, he tripped. His own feet have been his undoing once again."
Who's that giant guy that was around AJ Styles for a while?
Omos.
Yeah, I'm 2 inches taller than that guy.
No, Omos is 6'2", you think?
Yeah, he's 6'2". AJ Styles is 4'11".
AJ Styles is actually just a thumbtack. That's why he can do such impressive things. You just flick him, and then he's like, "Whoa, look how many flips he did."
It's also AJ Styles is sort of evidence for not doing any drugs or drinking or being very Christian, because he is like, it's something like he is as old as Hulk Hogan was in the NWO, and you're like, man, he looks way better than Hulk Hogan did then.
People just look way better than that. But anyway, Meltzer claims to have had contacts in the main office since 1987, the main office of the WWE. He, of course, this is the crazy thing about how small the UFC was back then. And the reason why he starts covering the UFC is because the UFC is what, like, every pro wrestler forever said, yeah, but like if you actually know amateur wrestling, you're the best fighter. And then the UFC proved that wrong. So it's really interesting to cover, like, obviously all these old guys. They're still old. Like Billy Robinson's still past the time where he could actually compete in athletic competition, but just all these old guys still have to be like, Dr. Death would still kill him. So they're kind of in that corner of like.
That's an interesting point. Yeah. And it's also like people like Danny Hodge, if the UFC had been around, would have had such a different career, because there is applied knowledge for what Danny Hodge did as an amateur wrestler that goes into UFC. And it's the most important thing Dave Meltzer does in his career, weirdly, is create this weird offshoot of expertise that is very much rooted in how he got information in wrestling, but then moves forward. It's also his entree into the UFC begats him acolytes, in that people like Ariel Helwani are clearly just being a more social, engaged version of Dave Meltzer. Like the way that Ariel Helwani behaves as a journalist, the way that he is very much all about, like he treats it as seriously as the goddamn like White House papers, is how much Ariel Helwani and Dave Meltzer treat MMA information. But what's weird about Dave is Dave now at this point in his UFC coverage, he is so kind of the like, he's kind of the, he behaves himself. You know what I mean? He's very, I've never really heard him that critical of the UFC.
Because he's like, he basically at a point had to be like, okay, am I going with MMA or pro wrestling? And I guarantee, because around the same time the UFC is getting really, really popular, is the Benoit murder. And then he sees those numbers with the Benoit murder and he for sure goes, I'm still pro wrestling. Or like, the Benoit murder happens and he's like, okay, am I not going to cover something that could, and he said this, kill my industry, kill professional wrestling, because the steroids in Benoit's system. Like Benoit had like everything wrong with pro wrestling, everything everyone's always complained about, was of what Chris Benoit fell victim to, and just like the inherent problems with professional wrestling, such as like obviously these guys are just violent maniacs who need to prove themselves because the thing they do is silly and fake. So it's like he had that line in the sand and he clearly chose to go with wrestling once again, and he'll stay with it till the day he dies. I assume typing a word that he'll have just typed the word Kofi Kingston and then pass away, but sitting up, like his body will not allow himself to.
Yeah, I think it's weirdly the last thing he will write is Vince McMahon's eulogy. What just happened?
I said bye to my wife and son.
That's fun.
Mm-hmm.
I assume you make them watch you do the podcast every week. They were just sat in a chair watching you.
Yes, just behind this computer is Felix. He needs to hear about Dave Meltzer.
Oh, wait a minute. Is your son, do you dress your son up like a little cameraman every time we do the wrestler review?
Yes, I do.
That's so fun. Oh, count us in.
And I yell, stand, stand.
Yeah.
This is how you stand.
And if I know your son at all, this is what he then reacts to doing? This is what he does?
Yeah, he just looks over. He just looks up at, he tries to find a light to look at. Obviously, the two biggest stories are the steroid trial, and Meltzer obviously does not gain favor. This is the interesting thing where...
Well, yeah, so because, okay,
Meltzer
the first thing is
the biggest pain in the ass with Vince McMahon, but also this is where him and Vince McMahon actually gain a relationship with each other, because Vince is just probably... He's like, I fucking have to vent to someone, and this guy obviously cares about wrestling.
And also, Dave is on Vince's side in the steroid trial. Because the way Dave reports it, he's like, the government doesn't have a case in the way they're doing this. They would have had a case if they had done other things, but the way that they went after Vince McMahon for the steroid trial, they had no case. Vince McMahon wins. That's the craziest thing about it. And that's the most interesting thing about Dave Meltzer is Dave Meltzer actually is usually like the most pro wrestling voice as a journalist, in that like he is very much of the like, they don't respect this sport, even though it's a huge part of the entertainment industry. It's always been a huge boon to television. But here's how they're fucking us in our fun thing. And then that same analytical eye is then turned on the promoters and turned on the creative, and they really, really hate it. In the way, like the steroid trial, he was actually very pro McMahon. When he appears on Donahue, he's actually weirdly pro McMahon because he's like, a bunch of the stuff these people have said is unverified. A bunch of the points Vince McMahon is saying are actually true. Like, he very much was like, yeah, superstar Billy Graham has some points about steroids, but it's also like superstar Billy Graham was taking steroids well after he was in the WWF. Like, it's a problem with wrestling at the whole. He shouldn't be sick.
Yeah, it's not he started in the WWF. It was something he did already.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Dave, is Dave will point, he's like, he's being hypocritical. I must point out that hypocrisy. And you're like, thank you, Dave. You weird man.
Also, the thing he has in common with Vince McMahon is, we got to touch on it again, these guys are doing vanity steroids.
Amazing point.
I'm going to throw that out there, like, Dave Meltzer, and I don't think it's, like, I'm not one of those people who, like, will judge anyone for doing steroids, because, like, you know, fucking people do blow all the time. Every weekend, people
Who are these
blow,
people?
and then
Who are these people?
There used to be two people talking to each other. I'll tell you that. But it used to but like, you know, people do recreational drugs. So who cares if you're doing fucking steroids like Dave Meltzer is? He's vascular as shit, and the man probably works 16 hours a day, 6 days a week. Like, of course he's doing steroids.
It's either that
Vince
or
McMahon,
talk
of course
to his
Vince
kids,
McMahon's
and
doing
we
steroids.
all know how he feels about talking to his kids.
They probably talk about, Vince McMahon and Dave Meltzer probably talk about how sleep is for pussies for 2 hours, and then they talk about just bench for 2 hours, and then they get into wrestling.
It's mostly just two guys saying the word bench to each other, not listening. Like, I guarantee most of Dave Meltzer's conversations with Vince McMahon thinks he's talking to a mirror. That's why Dave Meltzer got henched, by the way, is he had to. This was like reflection
Convince
on the wall.
Vince McMahon.
Yeah, reflection on the wall. Why are you so
mirror
pudgy?
On the wall? You look fucking sick again. Yes, I do.
Mirror.
Tell me what the honky tonk man's problem is. Okay, I don't know why you said something different than me, but here it is.
Yeah,
and
I don't know why
like, how over under on the amount of meals combined Vince McMahon and Dave Meltzer have ate sitting down in their lives?
Oh my God, they hate it.
I guarantee every time Vince just gets his hand on food, he instinctively stands up.
I mean,
I'll shit my pants. It saves time.
Dave Meltzer has been pretty pro the Saudi Arabia deal for the WWE for no other reason than he's very jealous the WWE gets to go to a country with such order twice a year.
They really know how to treat them down there.
Yeah, oh my God, so no movies, no distraction, so relaxing.
No, I mean, Saudi Arabia is going to be entertainment capital. I love the Saudi Arabia as being like, we're going to be the new Vegas. You know, Vegas was founded on a lot of weird stuff. So is this place.
Yeah. You know how Vegas was founded by a violent cabal of people that came from a warm place near a body of water. Yeah, here too. So basically, there's that sort of stuff. Then it's again he has a big boon in the Monday Night Wars because he basically becomes the guy who predicts all of the jumping and also is an amazing tool for wrestlers to know exactly how much a contract was worth. Bear in mind, like the outsiders have claimed at different times that they had favored nations in their contract, and so if anyone came in with a higher salary than them, they got that higher salary.
Mm-hmm.
So Dave Meltzer is one of the first people to report this. This is also when he becomes a real side in the thorn of people like Eric Bischoff and Bruce Pritchard, because Vince McMahon, thorn in the sign of, you know what I'm fucking saying? Fuck you.
Sign, not sign.
Side, that's what I said.
You said thorn in the... Never mind. Continue.
Correct
whatever you're going to say, Mr. Pink Shirt.
Correct me again, and this podcast is over.
I mean, we should mention this. Without patrons, this podcast would have ended a long time ago. Thank you very much. Continue, John.
That's right. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to take this time to thank all of our patrons for giving us some money and helping us pay Christopher Hobson, who does amazing research, because if he's not here, this is the research that you get. Hey, Dylan, who's Dave Meltzer?
Some fucking loser with a mullet.
Give me the high point.
He doesn't have a mullet, which means the ultimate bitch move. If you're born with a mullet, die with a mullet.
Yeah, low point, cut the mullet. High point when he had a mullet. Goodbye. Everybody. See you next week.
High point being swole, low point cutting the mullet. Get swole, get a mullet covered in fanny packs. No shirt or pants. I'm
Yeah.
only storage options.
Excuse me, sir. You told me you're from San Jose and your trousers do not anywhere have the American flag on them. I would like a goddamn explanation.
Oh, San Jose Sharks. More, you're the San Jose Shark, you fucking loser. Get out
I will
of
say
here.
this: where the San Jose Sharks, possibly the greatest vintage sports gear that is out there right now, and I am suddenly in the
Thank
need
you.
for a San Jose Shark T-shirt.
And I love the fact that they kept with the obnoxious colors even over years. John, say some more things about Dave Meltzer, then we'll wrap it
So
up.
we got the Monday Night Wars time. Then that leads amazingly into the WCW bankruptcy and the ECW bankruptcy, which are all, these are like Dave's like a high point for subscription, high point for subscription, Montreal Screwjob, high point for subscriptions. Then
He also
nothing.
thought that would ruin the business. Sorry to cut you off, but like that he thought that WCW and ECW going out of business, because it's funny because he also covered, this is how much Dave Meltzer hates personal relationships. He also covered the death of roller derby.
This
And that's
is
what
so
happened
insane.
with roller derby.
But it was also like, why? Who was demanding roller derby in your magazine?
Dave Meltzer was
David?
like, I love roller derby. I'm going to cover it. He's a man who, above everything else, and you said Joe Rogan, and I think that Dave Meltzer obviously isn't as, whatever you want to say about Joe Rogan, he's not as much of a fucking charlatan as Joe Rogan, which is just, Dave Meltzer doesn't be like, hey, I'm going to sell you this pill and it makes you fucking super smart. But they are the same person, where Joe Rogan was like, I like stand-up, I want to do stand-up. And then Bill Hicks was like, hey, you're a worse version of me. You get to open for me. Okay, sweet. You know what else I like? Fighting. I'm going to do the commentary for this fighting. Hey, this fighting thing became one of the bigger sports on the planet somehow. Okay, cool. I like talking with my friends. I'm going to talk with my friends. Now you like can have politicians on it. It'll move their numbers. Dave Meltzer did the exact same thing. I like wrestling. I'm going to talk about wrestling. I like roller derby. That didn't work out. But like the wrestling thing clearly did. And he's helped by ECW, because ECW,
Well, he's so helped by ECW because
they popularize fucking nerds.
popularize knowing, like, you're not in ECW, you're not nerds, you're incels, and you, my friends, are going to have your own president.
It's true though. Like with the advent of the internet, it's like Dave Meltzer, that type of wrestling fan is popularized in the late 90s. And if you're looking at it, him going full-time at the Observer, him starting the Observer in 93, I'd say 93 to 97, he waits 14 years for his ship to truly come in. And there's honestly he has this column in a major newspaper. I forget what the newspaper is, but he does report on wrestling.
There's an all
The
sports
National,
news.
is it?
The National. There was like a proto USA Today that I think might have been all sports at one point, and he was there. That's when that was in the 90s. That's when he sort of took a step back from the Observer and then revved right back with the Observer. Like he was kind of like, "Am I going to go somewhere else?" No.
The National didn't work out, so imagine the National is like a version of the Athletic, but actually a paper, like an actual fucking physical paper.
Yeah, it'd be like, imagine if ProPublica was just about sports, and you would be like, I don't want to meet those journalists. They are all bullies. And according to Dave Meltzer, you're right.
Honestly, I think, all right, so obviously now the man is 62 years old, but he's still doing great work. There's one comment by, I forget, he's a respected journalist, but the man's comment was, Dave Meltzer covers wrestling better than anyone else covers anything. The White House, anything. Dave Meltzer.
It's 100% true. As a journalist, this man is unparalleled in terms of amount of sources, integrity. The only time that you can actually go after his reporting is when he verges into opinion being the rating system. But even for his rating system, he is using like insider people. Jim Cornette's rating system that Jim Cornette invented with one of the progenitors of wrestling newsletters, Weasel Dooley. That's the rating system that Dave is using. Dave also, like, it's this weird thing of he has shed all of the clearly long-time sources. Like, you can clear that. For me, Jim Cornette and Dave Meltzer's falling out on Twitter over AW, what it actually is Dave Meltzer no longer needs Jim Cornette as a source, and Jim Cornette was clearly one of Dave Meltzer's long-term sources.
Yeah.
Like
I think that, but it's also like they fell out over, and it's crazy, they fell out over Kenny Omega, which is very much like, you know, the classic love and hate are this close together. And it's like, yeah, these nerds were going to fall out because Dave Meltzer's keeping up with what's happening with wrestling now, and Jim Cornette's idea of what wrestling is very much rooted in the '80s. And I think they're both right. Like I don't know. I'm not going to take a side.
I've taken a side.
What are you going to take sides? Whose side?
Bruce Pritchard's, weirdly, is the side I've ended up on.
But imagine, though, I think this is the line in the sand. Imagine, like, we both love comedy, but imagine our friendship ended because you liked the Chappelle special that just came out and I didn't.
So it would mirror real life.
It would. So, yes, we don't talk off camera.
Yeah. Dylan and I are the Mike and the Mad Dog of pro wrestling comedy podcasts. By the way, that's such a good niche sports reference for our sports journalist episode of Dave Meltzer here on the Wrestler Review. Because if you guys got a Mike and the Mad Dog reference, you better suck my dick. Also, what you know, I just got a text. It's the weirdest thing to be doing a wrestling podcast and then get a text message from your therapist that says, "You ready?" Because you have therapy right after this, and it's just a weird time to be talking about pro wrestling and then have a therapist text you because they're just
Did they accompany with a sound memo that just said "do do do"?
He turns on. You know how you can turn on active texts.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever he sends me "you ready," it just it's on fire.
John, what's the best thing and the worst thing about David Meltzer?
The best thing about Dave Meltzer is I think Dave Meltzer provides an actual the nerd voice narrative of pro wrestling, in that when he does appear on television to give journalistic perspective on wrestling, he never editorializes. He literally just says the facts, which I think has helped in things like the Benoit murders, because everyone else was giving like, this is terrible, this is tragic, and Dave Meltzer came on and was basically like, here is what happened. Here's how wrestling may have contributed to it. Here's how wrestling did not contribute to it. These are the facts. In the same way that all those wrestlers who died, he reported on all of them with lengthy obituaries, but it's like, it was painkillers, probably because he was a wrestler. Can we blame wrestling? Like, it's that weird sort of line that Dave Meltzer kind of walks.
Yes, he reports on things. He gives a clear reporting of what happened. Obviously, I'm not talking about the behind-the-scenes stuff, which most wrestlers will say he just kind of takes kind of hearsay and then just prints it up. But I just mean like on the Benoit murders, which is probably one of the most, the most important thing that's ever happened in wrestling is those Benoit murders. He reports on them.
And why was it important, Dylan? Why was it important?
Because Vince McMahon is Fox News the man, and Vince McMahon, if he was the only, or if wrestlers were the only resource for them to have on CNN, then they would have just been like, oh, well, actually, he never wrestled for us. I don't know who that guy is.
Also, the reason why Dave Meltzer loves the Benoit murders is he feels that Nancy Benoit protected kayfabe. She protected it.
Yeah, but I didn't create, but he definitely helped popularize a type of wrestling fan that obviously everyone listening to this show is. And honestly, if there's no Dave Meltzer, there's no Wrestler Review. And if there's no Dave Meltzer, I'm going to say it, me and John, probably in the eyes of our peers and our family, have better lives, but also worse lives effectively, because being a wrestling fan is pretty goddamn fun, John.
One last thing. Without Dave Meltzer, there's no AEW.
Without Dave Meltzer, there's like nothing. Like it's crazy, but without Dave Meltzer, there's no like, the Attitude Era is different. Everything's different.
Yeah, Vince Russo doesn't have an audience. Like, it's a he's such an interesting, like, he's one of those people where it's like, I almost feel like we should do a year of Dave Meltzer. Just to see. Yeah.
A year. Guys, I don't want to even do multi-part episodes ever again.
Tweet at Dylan, do we do a year-long Dave Meltzer review?
Even if it's 16,000 people to vote yes, it's not happening.
Everyone, let's start a civil war within the Wrestler Review. It's the wrestler versus the review. Dylan is the review. I am the wrestler. Do we do a year-long Dave Meltzer? That's tweet at Dylan Gott.
We'll use all the Patreon money. I'm gonna mail through snail mail Dave Meltzer 6 boiled eggs, and we're gonna have a camera above his house. When he opens them in the mail, if he doesn't say, these are ready to eat, and just sculls them without taking the shells off, I'll give you each $50.
Yeah, that's where the real protein is.
Ready to eat. Ooh, the blood lets you know it's good.
Sometimes you feel the shell when you're passing it.
I require fuel for your car. No, for my body. Give me the Snickers. I'll eat it with the fucking
Yeah.
wrapper on. Anyway, what's the worst thing about Dave Meltzer?
What's the worst thing about Dave Meltzer?
Mm-hmm.
That time he gave the Kenny Omega match 7 stars, and then I had to listen. Then the corner of the internet that's just wrestling was so annoying for like a year and a half because every comment was like, "I give this comment 7 stars, lol," and it's like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, I know the worst thing about Dave Meltzer is probably his relationship with anyone that loves him.
Yeah, I'll tell you who I have a relationship with: the people I love.
Unless they also have, this is the other thing I never take into account, maybe his wife has like a very comprehensive and successful column about The Bachelor.
It's interesting. His mom.
She makes more money than him, but we just don't care because it's all about The Bachelor and the ins and outs of The Bachelor. But she's a fucking queen.
His mom his wife is really into Mumsnet. She's one of the owners of Mumsnet, which was a very successful mums social media network, and has
Really?
now been taken over by pro turf activists, and it's just become like a very intense, like well font of anti-trans activity on the internet, and it's
I don't know if this is true, but I will say then her life completely mirrors her husband's. Because I guarantee there's a lot of people listening to this right now who's like, even when I mentioned the Chappelle special, pause the episode to fucking throw another couple Twitter comments about it on.
Oh yeah,
you know
I want you to say this right now. What I said about her working for Mumsnet, not true. What I said about Mumsnet is apparently very true, and I will tell you this: it does mirror what's happened to pro wrestling. What's that? Donald Trump's the president of the United States? Well, certain things are about to get very politicized. Like what?
Oh, buddy.
Being a mom and pro wrestling. How are those things even connected? Shut the fuck up.
Then they're the perfect match. I guarantee Dave Meltzer and his wife, they're both worried about missing leg day, so when they do make love, they attach just ankle weights on their entire body,
of
so
course,
you get a pump and a pump. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they call that the Dylan Gott.
She tells him to go. She tells they argue about who's going to be on top because that's the person that gets more calories burnt.
And they're the champion. That's the thing. Dave,
I'm going to put you over. That's what he says. And then she winks at him and makes another post about turfs.
Of course.
Or that she's pro-turf or not. Thanks very much for listening, guys. Give yourselves a round of applause right now. We'll pause for that.
You made it through. Also, if you're a Patreon portrayer member, guess what you are?
A lucky duck.
You are the Dave Meltzer of the Wrestler Review.
That's true. You're a turf.
Yeah. What? No.
If you listen to this show, you are friends with a turf. That's not true. I'm sorry.
Yep.
Don't listen.
Yep, that's right, Dylan. Go ahead, Dylan. Go ahead. It's so nice, by the way. It's so nice that you get to have a sleepless night knowing that No Context Wrestler Review is out there just waiting to make you seem like a monster. Just to know.
Don't worry, guys. I just want you, No Context Wrestler Review, if you're out there, you can say this unequivocally right now. John Hastings.
No. No, I'm not.
Anyway. I'm Woke Dylan Gott. That's Turf John Hastings. You can catch us at Dylan Gott, DYLANGOTT, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We're posting stand-up clips all the time at the John Hastings, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Go to fucking at Wrestler Review for Twitter, Instagram, fucking our Facebook page, facebook.com. Did you know that's the website? /Wrestler Review. We're posting long form clips. This week, I think I posted a bunch of 5-star matches that Dave Meltzer liked. Japanese ones, so we won't get copyright claims. Cool. And thanks so much for donating. We're up to 80. Recorded a new ad this week. We want to get up to 100 patrons. If you want, we'll think of something to do. I actually have all these old wrestling magazines. I'll start mailing them out to people if we get to 100 listeners, people who have donated the most and for the longest. Thank you very, very much for donating. John, do you have anything else to say?
I love you all. I have to go. This episode would have been longer if Dylan could arrive on time, but Dylan, and this is what he said right before the show started, I don't respect the listeners to our podcast. I show up when I please.
That's true. I said that. Thanks so much for listening, guys. Bye-bye.
Fuck me.